Hi, this is Frederic here.
Hey, Frederic, Jeff in Las Vegas. Good morning.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for speaking to me today about Halston.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Well, for someone like me, Generation X, who does nothing but wear clothing from Vans his whole life, I just have to say,
Yes.
You made a really entertaining documentary, not only about the fashion industry and about Halston's life, but just something that just would interest anyone in such a fascinating story. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, that's really important for me to, reach beyond fashion. I'm not a fashion person per se myself, so, when people who are not really into fashion respond to the film, that's the biggest compliment for me.
And not only that, while watching the movie, I mean, it just kept giving me flashbacks of my childhood in the 70s, all those styles. I remember them well.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, born and raised in Las Vegas. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, it's just very 70s here in Vegas, I'll tell you.
Yeah, that was, it's funny because Casino, I've always loved that Martin Scorsese film, Casino. I think it takes place in a little bit like in the 70s and 80s, right? I mean, and the world is very Halston. I mean, it's kind of it's the way Scorsese describes this world that existed before, but it has been taken over by, corporate America, was really inspiring for me in thinking about Halston and this capsule of time of like excess and glamour and art and then all of that washed away by corporatization of the early 80s. I think I saw some parallels there.
Oh, definitely. Howard Hughes came in and just totally made it all corporate, and all the mob was out overnight.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, tell me about in choosing this subject matter, because you said that you were not really a fashion person. Was it his story, or did people tell you about him, or to make that connection for me about choosing him as your next topic for your film?
Well, it came as the project came through my producer Roland Ballister, who had access to Halston's niece, who would work with him and lived with him in the sort of crisis period of 83, 84. And because I really wanted to do something else in fashion, I've been making fashion documentaries for 10 years now, more than 10 years, 15 years, more like that. So and I'm always looking for the story that goes beyond fashion and that is speaks to the culture at large, So I was, and I didn't know much about Halston, to be honest, because I knew mostly the Studio 54 era. I think, like a lot of people, unfortunately, they had this very one-dimensional take on Halston, and it's all about the Liza Minnelli and Halston at Studio 54. And there's so much more to it, and when I started reading some of the research, and I just realized that it was kind of a corporate thriller. I mean, what really grabbed me was the business story, and I was like, oh my God, this is a way for me to talk about some of the trauma of like dealing with corporate interests, in my industry, in the film industry, and the fashion industry. It's about the same. You always have to, negotiate between art and commerce, because we're not like painters or we're not like writers where we can sort of do our thing alone, in our studio. There's a mass medium, and
I think you can find stories in any industry, whether it be auto, whether it be music, whether it be fashion, where the artist is always screwed over by corporate America.
I feel, the artist is always vulnerable because it's the artist's name on the product or, on the piece of work. And the corporation, the businessmen know that, and they always try to exploit that vulnerability because, you want to make the best thing that represents your vision, and they're not really speaking the same language. They're just looking at numbers very often. So, I've had these experiences, these traumatic experiences, and I think the Halston story allowed me to talk about that, to talk about that that part of my practice, and then I think his story was just, I couldn't have written it better. I mean, the best screenwriters in Hollywood couldn't have written it better. It was epic. I mean, it was like such great story with twists and turns, and really like a corporate thriller. And the characters, in the middle of it are kind of amazing.
Well, Halston was
or the businessman.
Right, and Halston was an extremely private person. So when you went to go find people to speak about him, was there anybody who wouldn't talk to you, or were they pretty much willing to talk about his story?
I mean, some people, most people we approached actually were really worried about talking about Halston because, not just because he was private, but also because the story has been sensationalized before, and a lot of people have this take on Halston that's very fallacious, and so people were kind of a little bit on the fence. It helped a lot that we had Leslie Froelich as one of our partners, even though she didn't really have creative control or anything, but she was involved in the beginning, gave us her trust, and opened a lot of doors. Like once she started talking to us, and a lot of the models started responding to us, and then through the models we got to Liza Minnelli. It's kind of like a domino effect. Once you prove that you're in it for the real story, and whatever that means, the good and the bad. People understand that you're taking it seriously and you're not going to do a hatch job. So yeah, it was, and then on the other side of the aisle, you had the businessmen who were just worried that they would be villains. That was their main concern, and it took a lot of effort to convince them that we were going to take their narrative, their version of the story seriously. Because I really was. I mean, I really was taking it seriously. I never believed that Halston was 100%, the good guy or the victim. I think it was much more complicated than that. And, I hope the film reflects some of that. He had like huge problems with drugs and behavior, and he was at a crossroads in his career where other people were, getting a lot more attention, and so it was a complex story, that was not black and white. It was much more sort of shaded in terms of what the truth was, and it, I was really interested in getting to the bottom of it, in almost like an investigation. That's when sort of the idea of a detective investigating this story came about, because it was there was a lot of mystery at the core of it.
Well, there's he was the upper echelon of society, dressing them, and then he went what they said class to mass with J.C. Penney, dressing everybody in America. But then I understand they were trying to erase their entire history of him. How was that possible? And how difficult did that make it for you finding footage?
Yeah, I mean, it's shocking to me that they decided to not only erase the video archive, but also like divest his dresses. And it's like, I think it came out of two things. One is a complete misunderstanding of like what a creative business like fashion is. If you get, the businessman Carl Epstein would tell us things like, well, we had all the patterns and we had some of the fabrics, so we could recreate all of these samples. And we're like, Carl, I don't think that's how it works. These are museum pieces. It's not like you can recreate like a Picasso just because you have a photograph of it, And so there's a misunderstanding of like what they actually were dealing with. and also I think there was a power struggle, like going on. And I think even though they wouldn't really admit it on camera, I think there was a part of it that was about, getting under Halston's skin and kind of like humiliating him, I think. So that was part of it. And then the video archives, if you're, Halston was like one of the pioneers of using video. He was the first to really shoot consistently his fashion shows, and he, I like to say that he was the first Instagrammer because he really did project his life onto these images that he would very carefully construct. And so erasing the video library was just so petty. I mean, just to gain $100 on like blank tapes or something was really a little absurd. And thankfully, Halston had a copy of the tapes. That's actually said in the film. Most people don't really hear that line because they're just so shocked at what they're doing. But Halston had a copy, which thankfully sort of was passed on to Leslie Floyd, his niece. And so that was kind of the foundation of our research. We got 215 tapes to start with, and then the job was like really to go much further. I was so firm on that with my producers. I spent months and months sort of pushing them to find stuff that hadn't been found. And we found so much, like Halston giving a tour of his house. That footage had ended up in a Christian college, Lipscomb University, and 16 millimeter reel, that had never been developed. I mean, it was gems like that, or the China footage, which was incredible and was thought to be lost because NBC had done a documentary but then scrapped it. And they started shooting a documentary about Halston and then scrapped it back in like 81. And after weeks and weeks of sort of pestering, NBC archive, they finally found a box that had like all these raw tapes. And the raw tapes are incredible. It's basically like 5 hours of Halston sort of yelling at his staff, and being this incredible sort of perfectionist. But it was a godsend for me because in the raw footage you can see the Halston that he really wants you to see. It's the raw Halston. It's before it's edited and constructed into this narrative of the superstar designer. You could see the genius, the perfectionism, and you can see the problems that go with it.
And finally today, I was at Sundance this year, as I've been for the last 3 or 4 years, and your film was very popular. I wasn't able to get in to see it. But tell me, as a filmmaker, about your experience at Sundance and what it did for your film this year.
Oh my God, it was a dream to be at Sundance. I mean, it was, when you make films, you really hope for it to, it's like your baby, and you really, you're like an obsessive parent. And I'm very much like what they call it, like a helicopter parent or something, who wants really the best for the film. And Sundance in the U.S. is like really incredible. And I have to say, it was particularly great to be part of Kim Yutani's first year as a director, because she's been a great supporter of my work. She programmed Jor and I at Outfest. When I started, that was my first solo film, and we had a back and forth. I remember I was like, "Are you sure Jor and I is gay enough for Outfest?" And she was like, "Yes, absolutely, because of this A, B, C, D." And she was like, "I want to program it. Trust me, it's going to be." And she really pushed it. And same thing with Halston. She was so amazing. And when I got the call, in December that she was taking the film, it was just it was really great. And then she introduced it at the screening. So I feel blessed that she's in my corner basically.
Well, congratulations on the film. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I wish you all the best of luck. And thanks for talking to me today too.
Thank you so much.
All right, come visit us in Las Vegas. Come visit us in Vegas soon.
Yeah, I would love that. I love Vegas.
All right, thank you. Have a good day.
All right. Bye. Thanks. Bye.